recognizing there's a skills mismatch between those that go to universities and come out and what the needs of the labor market really is. And therefore, dealing with that skills mismatch requires a lot of effort in terms of building entrepreneurship. And that's very important. And then also getting venture capital funds that can support a lot of young businesses is going to be very important. Look at people like Zuckerberg, the guys who develop Google, and the guys who develop Twitter, the guys who develop Microsoft, Bill Gates. Well, young people, and they were supported by venture capital funds. So I think we need to develop and deploy venture capital funds to do that.
Society also called for more focus on education curriculum to teach youth on how to become job creators and not hunters.
But more than that, however, is that we need to re-engineer our educational system, so that we are not just producing people that I will call having labels, but don't necessarily have the competence required by the labor market. And that requires that the supplier of graduates understand the needs of the labor market and therefore can change their curriculum, right, so that we have job creators and not, job hunters.
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, Nigerian Minister of Agriculture, there will move ahead. The Acting Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Munir Guazo, has said empowering trade groups in the Nigerian capital market would enable the Commission focus on its primary responsibilities of regulating and developing the market. Guazo stated this in Abuja, said one of the policy thrusts of the present management of the Commission was the empowerment of trade groups for greater and more effective role performance in the market. According to him, SEC is leveraging on making it mandatory for every registered operators to belong to a trade group. Guazo disclosed that one of the highlights of the new rules on complaints management framework will be to allow manage at the lower levels. Finally, on the business package this morning, FMDQ OTC PLC, a Securities and Exchange Commission licensed over-the-counter market operator, has projected that 450 trillion naira transactions will be completed on its platform between this year and the end of 2017. The platform, which was inaugurated in 2013, had recorded transactions worth 104 trillion in 2014, and with the increasing awareness about bonds and treasury bills, the other fixed income securities as viable investment instruments, the company is confident it will achieve the set targets. The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, FMDQ OTC, Mr. Bola Onodile, said the company had a projection of 125 trillion naira for this year, 150 trillion naira for 2016, and 175 trillion naira for 2017. Onodile, who said the company had introduced several key initiatives aimed at transforming and improving the OTC market, said it also had plans to inaugurate a 100 million naira investor protection fund. Onodile, while presenting the company's review of 2014 and outlook for 2015 in Lagos, said the company is planning to institute an IPF so that investors would believe in the system and know that they would not lose their money while trading. And that's the package on business news for now. Thanks for watching. The program continues shortly. Do stay tuned.
Okay, thank you very much there, Seun, for the business package. And now it's time for us to take a review of today's papers. As usual, Bayo Atoyobe, the Good Morning Nigeria newspaper reviewer, is right here with us for today's edition. Bayo, welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Your face looks better rested today than it was yesterday.
Thank you
after
very much.
watching the Cup of Nations final on Sunday. Well, we begin our review with the Daily Trust. Daily Trust is our first paper. The lead story says, election won't be shifted again. That's quoting the NSA. NSA stands for the National Security Advisor. And also on the front page there, INEC extends PVC collection by 4 weeks. And the kicker, Obasanjo, there must be a new government on May 29th. And then also on the front page there, stocks, Naira dip after poll delay. And STF averts crisis over killing of youth in Jos. And OPEC sees more demand for its oil and less U.S. output. Now, let's go to page 3 also of Daily Trust. Daily Trust says NCAA, that's the Civil Aviation Authority, fails to sanction private jet operators over illegal operations. And also on page 3 there, no Nigerian should die for me. That's quoting President Goodluck Jonathan. No Nigerian should die for me. Now, let's also quickly get to page 4. Page 4, NLC to get new president tomorrow. That's the story on page 4 of Daily Trust. Page 4. And next paper that I'll be taking will be the National Mirror. National Mirror. Just above the name flag of National Mirror, 50 courier firms wind up and lay off 2,000 workers. 50 courier firms wind up and lay off 2,000 workers. The story is on the front page and jumps to page 2. But the lead story says opposition parties warn against tear gas removal, and 2 riders that call for work-free days for PVC collection, and reps move to stop ANEC bosses sack. Also on the front page there, deadline for PVC collection extended to March 8th, and petrol subsidy hits 487 million naira daily. And legal battle on Buhari begins today with the rider. Jonathan's case goes to appeal court. Details on page 6. Boko Haram kidnaps 20 in Cameroon. You can find out the details inside the paper at page 12 of the National Mirror. Next paper is The Union. The Union says Boko Haram over in 6 weeks. That's quoting the National Security Advisor. And then another story there on the front page, in quotes, no one must die for my sake. That's with a rider. Again, President Goodluck Jonathan commits himself to a bloodless election, asking Nigerians not to shed blood for his ambition. That's on the front page of the Union. Now, some promotional copies on the front page also of the Union. Another move to halt Jonathan fails. Details on page 6. And 24 firms indicate interest in car manufacturing. Details on page 35. That's of the Union newspaper. Now, I take the pilot. The pilot has, as its front page, just below the name flag, UN tasks INEC on rapid PVC distribution. Details on page 6. Boko Haram abducts 30 and attempts jailbreak in Cameroon and Niger. Details on page 6. Now, the lead story has a kicker. Eligibility suit. Jonathan and Buhari legal battles begin. 2 riders. Appeal court to determine case against president, and Buhari filled APCP as party in INEC form. That's according to the plaintiff. Buhari filled APCP as party in INEC form. That's according to the plaintiff. Details to be found on page 6. Also on the front page there, Ajero Waba vie for NLC presidency, and Shell accused of using Nigerian firm to buy Ogoni oil blocks. And Khan laments poor funding of Nigerian embassies in Israel, Rome, and Greece. Details on page 11. Also to be found on page 11 of the Nigerian pilot, Biafra group leaders no fate in treason trial on the 19th of February. And 26.2 billion naira debt court hears suit against Sonny Odogu on the 18th of March. Now, the last paper I'll be taking will be The Nation, and we're going straight to the inside pages of The Nation, the business section of The Nation, page 11. Page 11 of The Nation says BOI, that's Bank of Industry, boosts cassava bread with 2.2 billion naira. Also on page 11 there of The Nation, Nigeria's bulk trade is from maritime. Those are the 2 business stories to be taken in the meantime from The Nation newspaper. But just to go inside, there are also copies on aviation. Excessive charges killing airlines. That's a story to be found on page 15. And then NRC acquires new rail buses and trolleys. That's to be found on page 14 of the Nation. And on page 16, an energy story, federal government seeks 10% power generation from coal with a rider, more licenses for solar power generators. Brian?
Yes, Bayo Atoebi is shaking his head vigorously when you are reading some of those headlines, which tells me he has a lot to say. So I'll just quickly rush over the front pages of the few papers I have here, beginning with the Vanguard newspaper. We'll crush Boko Haram in 6 weeks. That's according to Dasuki. 3 riders to that story. Says new polls dates will not be shifted again. Boko Haram dismisses threat from regional forces. Opens new war front in Niger Republic. Polls shift is wrong deal by wrong man, says Tinubu. That's a story on page 8 of the Vanguard. And soldiers deployed in Port Harcourt as Navy intensifies securities in waterways. Again, that's on page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. Let's go to the bottom line. NLC Delegates Conference. Unemployment, insecurity, power supply dominate talks. All the details can be found on page 55 of the Vanguard newspaper. Let's look at the Newswatch Times now. And the lead story on the front page there is Nigeria won't split. U.S. dismisses report. And OPEC predicts higher demand, low U.S. supply, with the story continued on page 2. That's at the bottom of the Newswatch. And Boko Haram leaders vow to defeat sub-regional force. Details on page 4. SEG moves to stem 60 billion naira unclaimed dividends. Details on page 2. We'll move on to the Guardian newspaper now. Again, it's mirroring that story that was on the front page of the Newswatch. Nigeria won't split, says U.S. envoy. With the rider, Adefarasing preaches peace and unity. Details on page 2. How to achieve longevity, treat diseases associated with aging. That's a story on health there on the page. But other stories that have been promoted on the front page of The Guardian include government cautions military in move against Boko Haram, with the details on page 5. As well as a story on Lagos, Ambode Agbaje signed Peace Pact, Kano, PDP, APC, and 25 others too, with the details on page 10. Daily Sun is next. FG, Boko Haram flex muscles. Will crush terrorists in 6 weeks. Dasuki will defeat multinational force, according to insurgents. INEC extends PVC's distribution to March 8, and court refers Jonathan's eligibility suit to appeal court. There is another story that is promoted here. Senate divided over election postponement, with the details on page 8 of the Daily Sun. Bayo, it's over to you now.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Well, let's start with the reports from the war front as regards the insurgency. Yesterday, 30 people were abducted both in Cameroon and Niger by the insurgents. In Cameroon, a bus with 20 people had them seized in Koza, while the insurgents also attacked Kolofata. In Niger, Difa, a border town between Niger and Nigeria, was attacked again for the 3rd time. Boso was also besieged. However, the International Joint Military Force, originally planned for 7,500 troops, has now been increased to 8,500. The insurgents have indicated that their war is targeted at the world, and they have called on Cameroon and Niger to denounce democracy. Meanwhile, the National Security Advisor has said that the ongoing multinational offensives will destroy the known camps of the insurgency within 6 weeks. Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, has reiterated that the extension for the general election, which is now coming up March 28, would no longer be extended again. Also, Minister of Interior, Mr. Abba Moru, says the regional coalition was gaining upper hand, and Nigerian military will bring the war to a level for free and fair election in Nigeria. Meanwhile, INEC has extended the collection of PVC previously to end March 8 for another 4 weeks. It was previously to end February 8. It's now extended to March 8. The secretary to the INEC, Augusta Okagu, says that the extension will enable every registered voter to move forward and collect their PVC. However, the press secretary to the INEC chairman, Mr. Kayode Idowu, has said that the problem with the PVCs are that they are available. The challenge is for people to come forward and collect them. He also added that the period of the extension, INEC will use it judiciously to improve on its planning for the election. The United States ambassador to Nigeria, James S. Whistle, says that Nigeria is a strong nation that has not shown any sign of disintegration. The ambassador used the opportunity to dispel the rumor that U.S. had said that Nigeria was split. Actually, it was a research agency that is based in the U.S. that came out with a study that was postulating that Nigeria was likely to disintegrate in 2015. This pronouncement was made at the premiere of a film titled Selma, which featured the non-violence campaign of Dr. Martin Luther King, particularly during the Civil Rights War. He surmised that Nigeria is not the only country that has problems and challenges, adding that the U.S. had its political challenges and that it did not make the U.S. to split. Pastor Adifarasi, who was also there, also said that Nigeria should know that peace is not the absence of tension, but rather the presence of justice, and Nigerians should work hard for peace, unity of the nation. The U.S. consulate in Lagos has also gotten the lead candidates of the APC in Lagos, Akiwumi Ambode, and that of the PDP, Jimmy Agwade, to sign to a peace agreement. While Agwade emphasized that the importance of violence-free election, Ambode reiterated that he is committed to support non-violence. In Kano, 27 political parties, including the APC and the PDP, also signed a two-page accord under the auspices of the AIG in charge of Zone 1, AIG Shinaba Adenrele. However, a similar peace pact signed January 24th by 16 political parties in Kwara State has been breached severally. PDP campaign was attacked at Okioi in Kwara, while the APC campaign was attacked at Ishapa. The most vicious occurred last Friday in Ilorin Metropolis, where youths belonging to the APC and PDP got at each other. The native Ilorin Descendants Progressive Union has admonished all the youths to sheath their swords, adding that power belongs to God. The Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba, has directed that all suspects arrested from all incidences connected with violence in the current ongoing campaign should be prosecuted immediately. The Public Relations Officer for the Force, Commissioner Emmanuel Ojukwu, said the suspects are to be tried under Section 227 of the Constitution, as well as Section 94 and 95 of the Electoral Act. And the IG advised politicians to play according to the rules, as hooliganism will no longer be contained. Meanwhile, until March 28, when there will be the presidential election, the current tussle is at the courts. 2 chains of cases have been filed challenging the eligibility first of President Goodluck Jonathan and also the presidential candidate of the APC, General Muhammadu Buhari, for his educational qualification. While that of President Jonathan has 3 cases pending, one of which has just been referred to the appeal court. General Muhammadu Buhari also has 2 suits pending. But until that court decides, the March 28th will be deadline at the polls. Ibrahim?
Well, Bayo and Ibrahim, I think basically...
Yeah, basically that's it, except that there's a denial, so to speak, that is coming, the U.S. denying that report that has always been bandied around that Nigeria will split in 2015. I guess it has finally been laid to rest now.
Well, it should be. And, I mean, my thinking always was that we shouldn't give life to any such proposition. Nigeria is ours, and it doesn't require any foreign foreigner to tell us how we should live our lives. Yes, we have challenges, just as every other country has its own challenges.
I think the U.S. ambassador was trying to set the record straight. It was a U.S. private research agency that came out with that revelation that from their study, Nigeria may not survive beyond 2015. But most of the time, it is often reported as if it was
the U.S.
United
government. That's correct. That's correct. I'm aware. You are right. I think it was sometime last year or so, a little over a year ago, he also stated that it wasn't the U.S. government that said that. But of course, in terms of analysis, some analysts or commentators just take the view that the U.S. government was predicting, the collapse of the Nigerian state. We remain one country, so that's the way it goes. Of course, Ibrahim, something has happened with the shift in the election dates, 14th of February. I'm sure some persons were already priming themselves to avoid their obligation on St. Valentine's Day.
Yes, those who felt they were done in for St. Valentine's Day now have their day, and they can also take the opportunity to collect their PVC and wait for March 28 and April 11 for the elections.
Yeah. But the point is, Ibrahim, I mean, you're not responding. Were you going to avoid your obligations?
Gentlemen, let's move. We've got more serious issues to talk about in just a moment. Bayo, thank you for stopping by to review the newspapers for us.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day. We'll take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria returns in just a moment.
Even family fun time is no sweat at all. That's because I use Dettol Re-Energize. It protects me and my family from everyday germs. With bursts of orange citrus, I end my day the way I started. Re-Energize.
Understanding the intricacies of daily life, discerning the hard choices and making the right decisions. Wherever and however, the choices are our realities.
While the Commission has a very good working relationship with all security agencies, especially on the platform of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security since its inception in 2010, it has been to seriously consider the security advisory presented to it by the security and the intelligence services. I would like to reiterate here that INEC is an election management body and not a security agency. It relies on security services to provide a safe environment for personnel, voters, election observers, and the election materials to conduct elections wherever it deploys. Where the security services strongly advise otherwise, it would be unconscionable of the Commission to deploy personnel and call voters out in such a situation. Last Wednesday, which was a day before the Council of State meeting, the Office of the National Security Advisor wrote a letter to the Commission drawing attention to recent developments in the 4 northeast states of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, and Gombe, currently experiencing the challenge of insurgency. The letter stated that security could not be guaranteed during the proposed period in February for the general elections. This advisory was reinforced at the Council of State meeting on Thursday, where the National Security Advisor and all the service chiefs unanimously reiterated that the safety and security of our operations cannot be guaranteed, and that the security services needed at least 6 weeks within which to conclude a major military operation against the insurgency in the northeast. and that during this operation, the military will be concentrating its attention in the theater of operations, such that they may not be able to provide the traditional support they render to the police and other agencies during elections.
Okay, that was part of the speech by the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Atahiru Jega, on why the dates of the general elections had to be lifted based on security advice. But of course, as I said, that's just part of it. There were other aspects of his statement. He referred in particular also to the statement he read out at the Council of State meeting last Thursday. And during the question and answer session, he further elaborated. Now, he did say that INEC was substantially ready for the elections, while admitting that challenges persisted. Critical amongst those challenges, of course, had to do with the rate or level of collection of PVCs. Now, as at that time, we had about 66.58% of collection, so which meant that some 34% of eligible voters, not persons seeking to register, these are persons who were already registered, had not collected their PVCs. Training also of INEC ad hoc staff had not taken off or had not been concluded. We also listened to part of that in the course of our news bulletin. The INEC Director of Voter Education indicating that they were now going to scale up the training of ad hoc staff. Now, we're taking all of this in totality to begin our conversation this morning. We are joined by Colonel Olamajo Egbe from our Lagos Network Center. Of course, is a retired military officer and a security expert. He'll be dealing with aspects of our security conversation. And right here with us in the studios, right in Abuja, we have Mr. Nicholas Mshaliza. Mr. Nicholas Mshaliza is a politician. Would like to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. And also, we have with us Dr. Emeka Ukengu, who is a public affairs analyst, as well as a development economist, familiar face on this program. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
It's always a privilege to be here.
Thank you very much. Brahim?
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Let's put all of this in perspective and begin by trying to see if we can make sense of what is happening. Despite these reasons, which should appear very cogent and verifiable, if you may, people are still expressing some level of distrust, and of course some people have argued that it's simply a product of bad politics, as it may. Do they have a reason? Do they have any grounds for this level of distrust that we're seeing? I'd like to begin with you, Mr. Okengu.
Thank you very much, my brother. You just said it. I mean, you just said it. You know, when you talk about bad politics, because you see what you're going to be looking at here, what we should be trying to phantom is this within the law? Okay, and like you said, these claims or statements or pronouncements by INEC, are they verifiable? Are they facts on the ground? First and foremost, to start with, INEC has not just only extended the date of elections, they've also extended the date of the collection of the PVCs. And in that statement that Kingsley had earlier mentioned, the INEC chairman had actually also admitted that PVCs were still being printed, and that out of the 66% that Kingsley had mentioned in the intro, only 45 million had been collected. And that is even contestable. Okay? But let's you also now have some other logistics issues. You're introducing, first and foremost, let me say that we must, as Nigerians, commend INEC for the innovations they're introducing. That must be commended. But in introducing these innovations, you must be able to also test run them. Because when people are talking about card readers, you're talking about POS, basically, so that the man in the streets can be part of this conversation. It's the same, things you use in the market, in the supermarkets to be able to pay. You put in a card there, it reads it. It is not 100%, efficient. Sometimes it fails, okay? And even at that, there are also talks that all these, card readers are not even arrived into the country. The training manuals have not been developed. So it's not only about even, going to identify those you're going to, or even probably now, picking these guys you're going to train. You need to develop manuals to train them. And there are two levels of training. Your presiding officers haven't been trained. Your ad hoc staff haven't been trained. I even understand that some materials are also being printed. So when the INEC chairman says to you, this extension is good for everybody, most of us, is good for us in INEC, considering the hype that has followed these elections. I mean, it's sometimes I find it a little bit funny that one group will say to you, hold an election against all the odds. Hold an election when there are facts that are on ground, that supports that this election extension, more so when it is within the ambient of what the law allows. President has come to say to you, 29th of May is sacrosanct. It's not as if the PDP, has had failed rallies or had rallies that didn't turn out as engaging as that of the other opposition parties or people now calling for the extension. So the plea, what Nigerians should be asking really now is, why are we insisting, knowing how tight this election is positioned to be, why are we insisting on running into disaster? Why are we insisting? And somebody says to you, 14 local governments. If you understand, I'm not a military expert, but you don't need to be a military expert to know that in organizing a military campaign, even if it's going to be 14 local governments, you might be taking 4 or 5 states, logistics, planning, locations, and all that. So for me, my brother, I've asked this question, and I'm asking Nigerians, is there any military campaign going on in the regions or areas that the INEC chairman had mentioned? You people have been doing a lot of vox posts, okay? Now, those cards that they are showing uncollected, are they fake cards? Those human beings that you see in those collection centers, are they Niger people? Are they from Somalia? Are those locations in Nigeria? And if you see this in empirically, the press has been very expressive. Have done so much to be able to show that INEC in itself, even when it was saying was ready, facts on the ground, empirical evidence clearly showed that they were very far. Very, very extreme from ready.
From ready. Okay, but let's join Nicholas Micheliza. What's your take on this? See, in the public imagination, security is apparently probably the sole and overriding consideration on the shift of the polls. But from what the background accounts and also the analysis provided by Dr. Okengu, there are other more serious issues that ordinarily would ground this. INEC probably has been given a lifeline. What's your view on this?
Thank you very much. First, I want to state, just like the first speaker said, that the postponement, was it within the confines of the Constitution or of the law? Yes. Does it have a precedence? Yes, it had. In 2011, I was a contestant to the Federal House of Representatives. And that time, it was only one day to the election, and these elections were postponed. There was no hue and cry like it's happening now. So to me, I feel it is those people that are looking at this issue with suspicion that should be looked at with mistrust. I want to say something. Yes, they say security issues, and they say that the issue of the PVC collections also is an issue. And in INEC statistics, we have 34% yet to be collected. Believe you me, it is more than 34% that has not been collected. There are those PVCs that have been collected by proxy, that the real owners don't know where these PVCs are. Those ones also constitute certain percentage. I am from the state which happens to be the heart of the insurgency, which is Borno State. State agents collected these PVCs, and the real owners don't know where these PVCs are. For whatever reason they have done that, nobody knows. Now, the issue of the IDPs are yet to be resolved. Are they going to be disenfranchised from voting, for exercising their fundamental human rights? We don't know. INEC, as at the date of postponement, has not been able to tell us in Borno State how those elections will hold for the IDPs. We all agreed that these elections should hold outside the camps, because the camps have been under the control of the state government, and every other person denied access, even if you are bringing relief materials. And the PVCs for the IDPs in those camps have been collected by the state government. For whatever reason, we do not know. And we had just about 1 week to elections, and the INEC would say it's only security. No, it isn't. Now, some people are coming from, have to pay for transportation from Yola camps, Taraba camps, to come into Maiduguri to try to collect their PVCs. They couldn't find the PVCs. So to me, it is beyond 34%. Now, on the issue of local governments that are inaccessible, the law says that for you to return a governor as elected, you need to have 25% in 2/3 of the local governments, apart from having majority votes. We have 27 local governments in Borno State, 14 are inaccessible. It is now, we are now left with less than 25%. How will the governor be returned? From my own local government, we have about 12 wards, and you cannot just enter 5 of the wards because of the insurgency. Now, the insurgents have gone ahead in some wards to go house to house to collect back the PVCs that citizens have collected to destroy them. Now, when they mention the issue of insecurity, some people are now saying, why are you saying insecurity? He who wears the shoes feels the pain. Those of us from the areas infested by the insurgency knows how important security is to us regarding these elections. We have 3 senatorial zones. Borno North entirely is taken over. It's a no-go area. Will that senatorial constituency produce a senator now or not? Therefore, it is necessary, it is a good thing for both the security agencies and INEC to put their house in order in the next 6 weeks, so that even if we do not achieve full perfection, we will achieve near perfection to a certain level. The states affected by the insurgency are also part of this country, and they also need representatives in every arm of government to further developmental goals in such areas.
I think it's a very good point for us to bring in our security consultant now, Mr. Colonel Ola Majoegbe, retired, in our Lagos studio. If you can hear me, Colonel Majoegbe, we're discussing security here. That would appear to be what the majority of Nigerians ran away with, like Kingsley pointed out earlier on, as the major reason for this shift. But of course, as we're beginning to hear now from account of people who witnessed it firsthand, there are more issues to it be that. And even the security matter was treated as if it was a non-issue at all. Perhaps we need to, at this point, begin to see precisely what are we talking about when we're talking about security for elections. Let's break it down and perhaps appreciate it more.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Nigerian Television Authority for inviting me to participate in the discussions of this very, very important issue. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding and lack of information. I like to explain it like this. When the security and intelligence forces say they cannot provide security, it is the product of a standardized procedure for handling matters. Let me break it down this way. If you say to the security agencies, excuse me, you would have to provide security for the elections, what they normally would do is to take the assignment, that is the task they have been asked to accomplish. Then they will take all the resources available to them. Then they will look at the tasks and the resources. If they find that in the assignment of troops to task, they can provide the required service, then they will get back to the authorities and say, we are good to go. But if they look at the tasks, all the minute details involved, and they find that the resources are inadequate, then they will get back to the authorities to say, look, we are unable to perform this task at this time because the resources are inadequate. Excuse me. I think what most Nigerians should be doing at this time is saluting the courage of the security agencies, saluting their professionalism, saluting the fact that they have refused to be railroaded into what would have turned out to be a disaster. Let me break it down further. Nigeria is a very huge country. Borno State is bigger than many countries in Europe. We have a very large population. The border of Borno State with Cameroon is 1,500 kilometers. We are going to have hundreds of thousands of polling booths where security will be required. The routes to the various locations will have to be manned. Now, I want Nigerians to listen very carefully to the next point that I'm going to make. All the routine duties that security agencies perform, they will still continue to perform even during the elections. What do I mean by that? The kidnappers and criminals in the southeast have not stopped kidnapping. The criminals in the creeks have not stopped damaging our oil facilities. All the key points and vulnerable points still have to be manned. Traffic in the cities have to be controlled. Detention facilities have to be protected. VIPs have to be provided escorts. So when you take all of this and put them together, it is a huge mix. And I would have been scandalized if the security agencies said they were ready. It is just a huge assignment that requires more resources than we have now. I'd like to make another important point. The security agencies go through this standardized professional procedure, as I have said. There is a lot of contention as to whether troops of the armed forces should be involved in the maintenance or provision of security. If the Nigeria police, as the lead agency for law enforcement, were ready, but the armed forces were not ready to provide backup in the event that the police is overpowered, it will be suicidal for the police to say, we are good to go. Because the Constitution provides that the military should give aid to civil authority. So if the police want to go ahead, they must be sure that there is a fallback position with the military involved in offensive operations in the northeast. They just will not be able to provide any standby forces to support the police in case they are overwhelmed. Now, this point is very important. Before now, the armed forces of Nigeria have been on the defensive. Boko Haram carries out an attack, they react. But that has changed. Now they are on the offensive. And when you are on the offensive, you need 3 times the number of troops and equipment that you will require when you are on the defensive. So the main backup force is almost fully engaged. The force that should provide the immediate security is overstretched. And so my take on the matter is this. I am not a lawyer, I'm not a politician, but by God, I'm a bloody good security expert. Nigerians should just thank God that we have security operatives who can say to the authorities, maybe this is something that the authorities would not want to hear, but that they can say, we cannot do this task. They ought to be commended. And I think history will commend them for posterity.
Well, Colonel Olamajo Igbe is retired. He had some tour of duty in Liberia. He was also in Lebanon. and of course he trained in the U.S. and he was in military intelligence. We'll keep you on hold in the meantime. He says, in his own words, a bloody or damn good military expert. Gentlemen, we'll return to the Abuja studios. You've listened to the explanation by the security expert. I'm not sure that many persons have this perspective, but we'll keep that on pause in the meantime and return to the issue that Mr. Mshaliza spoke about, namely the collection of PVCs by proxies, state governments. Now, we'll link that up with the fact that in some states, Lagos and Kano, for instance, because we raised the issue on this program, persons bearing certain names were being, as it were, systematically denied of their PVCs. It was an issue that we put to the INEC, to the REC of Lagos, and they said probably that would be the handiwork of a few mischievous persons. Still, 26 million voters had no access to their PVCs as at last week. And if the elections were to go ahead, what would have been the consequences, Mr. Mshaliza?
Yes, I will still maintain that it is beyond 26 million. Because this is just going by INEC statistics. They perhaps do not have the advantage of knowing those that have not got their PVCs in their hands, even though these PVCs have been collected by proxy. The implication of this is that there are a certain group of people, I would say homogeneous group of people, in the sense that perhaps based on political beliefs or ethnic differences, that will be denied voting for the candidates of their choices. This is not only happening in Lagos, but it is also happening in other states. And I always want to speak about my state, which is Borno State. Most of those PVCs collected by proxies, most importantly, are PVCs from areas that the state government feels are not with them. And again, in Borno State, there was also the issue of handing over a complete number of PVCs belonging to certain areas to the traditional rulers of those areas to distribute to their subjects. Now, all these are anomalies and are not covered by law. Now, the INEC says you cannot use TVC, that's temporary voters cards, to vote. And yet, people have more of TVCs now than PVCs. Secondly, at the point of collection of your PVC, you are supposed to surrender the TVC, the temporary voters card. You now have people that have both the TVCs and the PVCs together in their hands. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of people would want to vote, but will be denied the chance to vote. Now, the awareness is so high now that a lot of people want to exercise their rights to vote for credible candidates, to vote for candidates of their choices. But they may not be allowed to do that because of all these anomalies. Now, there will be now, at the end of the day, little percentage of people that will determine leaders. And this has grievous consequences even in times to come, because with each passing election, we are supposed to be improving in the quality of elections and even in the quality of people we produce to go and represent us. With all these percentages coming down now because of problems we see either in the preparations towards the election or because of problems of insecurity, because I will still have to bring in the issue of security here, because in some of these areas, if the voters are not protected, if the electoral officers are not protected and the electoral materials are not protected, just like I mentioned earlier, if a PVC could be collected by force by the insurgents and broken and destroyed, so also the boxes can be destroyed at the point of election.
Mr. Kengu, let me talk to you about this. 26 million voters who don't have access to their PVCs, as the case where the gentleman Nicholas Mshaliza is saying it's even more by his own account. Tell me, if we had gone ahead to conduct election under these circumstances, would we have been able to hold our heads up high and say, look, that was a fair and credible election?
No, let's talk about the 45 million people that have collected, and let me tell you the challenges that they could also face. I mean, we'll have a giving of 26 million that don't have. Can we look at those who have? Now, if you have a PVC, and that PVC is not tied to a polling booth, and you go to stand in line for accreditation in a wrong polling booth, you might get to the point where that card reader says to you, this is not your polling booth, and you're disenfranchised. That's one. If you're talking about the IDPs, there are 3 sets of IDPs. They are IDPs out of location. Most Southerners who were in the north have fled the north. They are somewhere else, but they are IDPs. The ones who are in the north, some of them are in homes, others are in camps. Now, but can we now take something that's probably a lot of people haven't thought about? That when we were registering, what happened was that they took your fingerprints. And the PVC every Nigerian who registered has is his thumb. That the moment you put your thumb, if that thing was done right, on any instrument that can read your thumb, everything about you would have come up. Can we begin to now think about it? That what it is you have here is a biometric system. So for INEC to say to you, you have collected my biometrics and the only thing that can now read me is a PVC, begins to complicate it even some more. Now, Ms. Eleazar had also raised a point. My wife is from Adamawa State. And you need to be there. When people talk about these insurgents, I'm going, if you give me your email address, I'm going to mail pictures to you and you stop eating meat. You will see people roasted, and I'm talking about them in their hundreds. So when you're talking about security and somebody says to you, it doesn't matter, the elections must hold, there is a plan, there is a program, you begin to wonder, this man who's talking about this plan and program, does he not have a research unit? More so, when even the person in question who's leading this charge says to us, the moment you make me president, I am going to stop insurgency. But I haven't come here to talk politics. Like you said, we are facing issues as they are in themselves.
Let's talk about the implications.
So,
a lot of theories have come up. Sorry to...
What is the implication now, my brother?
They are saying one of them is that apathy on the part of others. Do you see that happening?
I have a lecturer who says the answer is in the question. Okay, now when you are not able to use it, you have a PVC and you can't use it because you don't even know where your polling booth is. That's one. 2, you are standing in a line, you have a TVC. The difference between your TVC and your PVC is that one has a chip. Every other details on the TVC is the same thing you have on the PVC. The only difference is the chip. One is plastic that can be read, the other one is laminated. And then you come to a polling booth where 300 people are registered to vote, 260 have TVCs, 40 have PVCs. And out of the 40 that have, they will now say, okay, Kingsley has won. Meanwhile, the 260 don't want Kingsley. And you are talking about apathy. You're looking for disaster. And that's what you're going to get. So what it is that we should be focusing on now is not to just take it on face value, INEC is ready. No, INEC must be able to show readiness. Right now, INEC has a lot of time to try so many things out. Be able to print their voter registers, be able to print their training manuals, be able to now show people that they are really ready for the elections. Because
are you suggesting, Dr. Okengu, that there's a sense in which Nigerians have been misled by the exaggerated pronouncements of INEC that it was substantially ready for this election?
Yes, I mean, from what is on ground now, because if it was substantially ready, I do not see how you would have extended the collection by close to 1 month. That's key. That's key. I mean, like I said, these are empirical things. What the Nigerian press has done for this election is that they have been very fair to all concerned. They have shown INEC's capacity. They have also shown people in the street struggling to go and get their PVCs. So when you say to me, is the unwillingness of a Nigerian to go and collect, and in one bit you say, oh, I'm also now expecting some PVCs to arrive. Who's fooling who?
That's right. Well, let's return to Mr. Mshaliza. Mr. Mshaliza, let's take a look at this politics now. 26 million voters had no access to their PVCs, and yet some political parties were saying, go ahead with the elections. And others were, urging caution. What were we faced with in that kind of scenario?
Well, I may be wrong, but I still want to say that INEC was not ready, and if some political parties were trying to stampede them into going ahead with the election in spite of the challenges that lay ahead, the elections would have been very, very, very chaotic. And it would have breeded more trouble than these little misgivings people are talking about now. Because like I said, you see, well, wards are delineated. I mean, local governments are delineated into wards and wards into polling units. I want to go into details now. Some of these internally displaced persons, you cannot find a whole ward displaced and into one specific camp. No. You have some still remaining in their localities, some in camps, and some must have run to their relations elsewhere for safety. And now you are telling me INEC want to conduct election in the camps. There must be one return sheet, result sheet for each unit. Now, I give you Askira Uba local government as an example in Borno State. 8 out of 13 wards are at home. That means 60% of them are at home. 40% are displaced. 30 out of the 40 are in Yola camp. 10 are in Maiduguri. Now INEC want to use the 10% in Maiduguri and return a result for Askira Uba local government. How justifiable would that be? When the 80%, the 60% at home, they will now say that we cannot go there because the place is not safe to conduct elections. And then you are supposed to produce a House of Assembly person there with just 10% from Maiduguri camp. Because INEC has now said that it is only those displaced within the boundary of the state that will have elections conducted for them. Now, even in terms of return, what is the polling unit number in the camp? It is not in the system. We have polling units registered based on their tab. On your PVC, when you check, you see the number, the registration number of the polling unit that you come from. So as far as we are concerned, it would have been very chaotic. And those people that were saying that the election must go ahead must have had their own sinister plans aside that nobody knows about.
We still have in Lagos retired Colonel Ola Majo Igbe and our two guests with us in the Abuja studios. We'll continue the conversation after this short break. Right, so we'll suspend the break, Ibrahim, and then and proceed with our conversation. Let's return to Colonel Majo Igbe at Lagos Network Center. Colonel, let's take a look at this. Why? But this is speculative now. Why has there been such popular misconception or misunderstanding of military operations with regard to what's going on in the Northeast and the nexus it has with the elections?
Yes, the reason is simple. First, I do not think that sufficient information has been made available to the citizenry. For instance, the security agencies have just put out a very short and simple statement. Namely, we cannot guarantee security. The people they are talking to do not understand the details, the ramifications of that statement. So, to bring everybody, in a manner of speaking, to the same sheet of music, let us look at some of the things Nigeria is asking the security agencies to do during this election. Number one, they have to provide protection for the various level of staff, permanent and ad hoc. They have to provide protection for let me I'll put it down. Okay, for the very, very sensitive electoral documents. they have to provide protection for various agents of the parties. They have to provide protection for the monitors, NGOs, and all that.
All right, yes, let's return to Mr. Okengu here in the studio and talk about the gain that this shift indeed has conferred on Nigerians now as a nation and as a polity towards achieving the kind of election that we so much desire come 28th and the 11th of April. Let's look at the gains now.
The first gain is that I think we returned to sanity. We returned to sanity. You needed to know the amount of, movements across this country. Easterners were rushing home in their droves. Northerners were coming this way, in equal numbers. Because every Nigerian somehow knew. I mean, you could cut the tension with a knife. Let's be real here, gentlemen. So the first gain is that somehow people are like, okay, fine, we can actually test this program. Because most of us have started shouting early on to say this is not working. At the point in time INEC was releasing statistics, at one time a group started marching the streets with facts, saying a section of a country, had only 46%. I mean, they were just giving figures of a whole zone having only 3.1 million voters, while another zone was having 14, 15 million, PVCs, already collected. And then they were now saying, okay, the collection process was skewed by INEC because it was now being given to people by proxy. So these were all the issues that needed to be sorted out. Right now, you have an extension of 6 weeks. And instead of now celebrating the people who are brave based on incontrovertible evidence to be able to take decision, people are throwing stones to say, oh no, this is an insult on democracy. This is this. And then these are the same people who says to you, government has failed in its duties of protecting, the citizenry. So what's this about? I mean, as Nigerians, if you had a voters, like in my own case, I was able to go and stand there all day because I could afford to stand there. If I had a driver, okay, I have staff who needed to do things in the office, would they be able to do the same thing? What I think INEC should be pushing now is it because some of us have the confidence and somebody says, go and collect your PVC, and forgets that the person could be either a driver or a cook or somebody who is doing some essential duty that will not require him out of that post, for more than an hour at every given time. So what I thought that INEC should have been asking government to do right now is probably, are you able to now begin to plan public holidays or half days, where workers, or are you going to now extend to Saturday, Sunday, let INEC work 24 hours? Are you going to also now try to see if you can drop these cards with banks, with places people can now go and pick them with proper identification? Because when you say in the past elections, 45% or 30% collected, this is not a past election. We are getting more and more involved in our governance structure. People are getting more and more aware and conscious. Go to the social media and see what's happening there. And again, that's the confusion. Because you see, some people now go to social media, organize polls between you and I, we vote in somebody and he's won. And the person now starts behaving as if he's president. Okay, so you see, this mad crescendo, he had gotten to a point where I think it was divine that this happened. It was extremely divine for everybody. You could see relief even on the part of the INEC chairman because the man had been put into a pressure pot. You could see relief on the part of everybody, inclusive of even the political parties who are now grandstanding. That is the truth. That is the truth, because I mean, if you show to them, okay, tell us how you intended. Mr. Mezelia had just explained it. That's right. Okay, I mean, his explanation is faultless. And you are not talking about only Borno, you're talking about Adamawa, you're talking about Yobe, you're talking about Gombe, you're talking about Nasarawa, which is next door. You're even talking about some other places that have the challenges of a Fulani herdsmen and all that. So it's just, we were just not, and let me tell you what made this a little bit more difficult, was the insistence on the use of the PVC. I tell you, my brother, that is what made it, that's what has created this whole, bubble that is busting now. So I think what are the gains, to answer it directly, first and foremost, we've taken back our country. Because at one time, we stopped being Nigerians. we were either PDP or APC. And if you're APC, you came from heaven. If you're PDP, you came from hell, for those who are supporting APC, and vice versa. Nobody became, in fact, I walked into a studio program, and then somebody says to me, for crying out aloud, for all the whole respect I have for you, I've lost it. The moment I saw you mention support for PDP, I have lost it for you. And I was looking at this guy. Listen, my friend, you live in a PDP government, okay? You ride in roads provided by this people, and this is our country. The president is our president. So this is what the tension was, and I think this is what this extension has been able to,
Well, yeah, Mr. Micheleza, following on from what Dr. Okengu has said, in the lead time that we now have before March the 28th, when we're having the first round of elections, what would you advise INEC and other stakeholders to do?
Yeah, thank you very much. This period of 6 weeks should be used to achieve so much, including, number one, the security agencies who have already started to record some measures of gains in reclaiming some of the lost areas should intensify in their campaigns and ensure that every displaced person gets back home to be able to participate in the elections in the approved designated areas. Now, INEC on its part should ensure that every registered voter gets its PVC. And those whose PVCs have been collected by way of denying them their rights should be reissued their PVCs so that they can vote. And apart from that, government should ensure they should step up campaigns to assuage fears, to reassure Nigerians that all is well. You see, I just came back from home, from Borno, and I was addressing some group, and they were asking me, this one that everybody is going back to his homeland, what's your advice to us, sir? And I told them that stay where you are, because where you are going, are you sure you are going to be safe? Because people have been, you see, the media hype and all these people that are prophets of doom have instilled so much fear into people. That is also akin to another form of terrorism, because the definition of terrorism is to instill fear into someone. And please, government should do something. The political parties on their part should be more civil, should be more manifesto oriented, instead of beating the drums of war. They should practice politics without bitterness. At the end of the day, it is one person that will be this, it is another one that will be this, and we are all Nigerians. So this period of 6 weeks, we should use it to perfect the system, the electoral system, and especially INEC should try to prove to all Nigerians that it is going to be a fair umpire in the electoral process.
Well, many thanks to you indeed. Nicholas Msheliza is a politician who's been talking to us on the issue at stake now. I would like to thank you for coming on to the program. I hope you will avail us your presence if we do ask you to come around again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go over to Lagos now and also get closing remarks from the gentleman there in Lagos. But what we'll be asking him straight away is, as concerning the 26 million or more people that don't have PVC, I'd like to just get your advice to INEC at this point before we round up with you, sir.
I would advise INEC to get into the overdrive mode. If it has to render 24-hour service, well, so be it. But I am more interested in making one final point. From what we have seen so far with respect to security, some campaign rallies have been attacked in some parts of the country. Vehicles have been set ablaze. The security agencies are saying they are not ready. What I would advise them to do is this: tell government what you require in terms of personnel and equipment to be ready in 6 weeks. Now, if they do that, I am absolutely certain that government will provide those things that they need, and they will be able to provide the security, which is why they were established in the first place.
On that note, would like to thank retired Colonel Olamajo Igbe, who's been speaking to us from our Lagos Network Center. Once again, thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
We're taking a short break, and when we return, we'll continue with our conversation this morning on matters arising from the shift in the dates of this year's general elections.
I bet you can touch your nose with your thumb. A nose? It's the same with your toilet. There are many places in your toilet that detergents cannot clean. That is why the new Harpic 5 times complete gives you 5 times better cleaning than detergent from the rim all the way to the U-bend, making your toilet completely clean. With Harpic 5 times complete, you will definitely reach all the hard-to-clean places in your toilet.
Harpic Power Plus. Buy now for only 350 naira.
My mom told me great acting needed good health. I've played so many roles in life, but my proudest role is mother to my children and my community projects. I've achieved all this thanks to good health every day with Dettol. And to be 100% sure that my children achieve success in their life, I trust Dettol, so they don't miss a single day of good health.
Dettol, proudly part of Nigerian health for 50 years.
Understanding the intricacies of daily life, discerning the hard choices and making the right decisions. Wherever and however, the choices are our realities.
Thank you for remaining with us. I'd like to introduce our next guest. Is Professor Sam Egu. Professor Egu is of the Political Science Department, University of Abuja. Prof, thank you for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you.
A lot of issues, a lot of fallout from the shift in INEC date, and we've discussed extensively and touched about virtually all the aspects and the reasons adduced for that shift. What we need to do at this point is to begin to see in the next 6 weeks available to both the electoral umpire, the political parties, and indeed Nigerians, what should we do to get things right? The way forward.
You want to start with me?
I am starting with this.
Oh, well, yes, I think that is the most important question to pose at this point in time. On Saturday, when it was very clear that this was going to happen, there was a lot of apprehension in terms of how people were going to react to this postponement. And if you look at what has happened so far, it does appear that those who feel so angered by the postponement and those who have hailed the postponement have points. And there are arguments on both sides. But I think for me the most immediate problem was what was going to be the reactions of Nigerians. But I think this has been well managed, and I think it's victory for Nigeria. The president has put out a statement to say that, look, this postponement is necessitated by all the reasons adduced. And I think the opposition, parties, even though some of them have kicked, they have also appealed to their members to accept what has happened, as the reality, and tell them to be calm and prepare for the election, on March 28th. So I think for now, there has been a major victory for Nigeria. So what do we do from here? I think one of the most important issues that I think we need to focus on going forward is that we need repeated, and I think this is very important, repeated assurance that between now and August, it is possible to overcome insurgency. And this is why I think I must make a point that in this country, we lost a big opportunity by the ruling elite failing to come together against insurgency for 4 years. And I'm saying this not just a particular fact. All the Nigerian ruling elites have failed. People thought they can make political capital out of this, both ruling and opposition. And this has really blown on our face. So I think this is not, so we need assurance that it is possible and that we'll do everything possible to overcome insurgency, and that all the security challenges that needs to be addressed during the election will be addressed. And I think this is important. The second point that I think we need to focus on is what we do to ensure that those who have not collected their permanent voters, the cards, do so between now and the election. And here, I need to make my point very clear. You see, people have said social number important they collect. For psychological reasons, they need to collect. For the reason that they don't have to be disenfranchised, they have to collect. But let me also say, that it is possible for people to attain 100% collection of PVCs. That does not guarantee 100% turnout in election. In fact, if you go back, the turnout was between 45 and 50, and that election was hailed as Nigeria's best since 1999. But the fact that you have that kind of level of turnout is not a justification for excluding Nigerians in this number from collecting their PVCs. But my point is that we will drive the collection of PVCs. Political parties should encourage people who have registered to collect. INEC should stretch themselves in terms of logistics and going down to community level to ensure that people collect these PVCs. But that will not be the basis for us to suggest that, once we have 100% PVCs collection, there will be this level of turnout. And in fact, the trend in many democracies today is that the best you can achieve in voter turnout is about 50 to 55. Now, I think political parties have a major role to play between now and the election in terms of the messages they are passing to their people, in terms of insisting that members, those who are their potential members, collect their PVCs. Give them basic information about the voting regime in this 2015 election, particularly the link between PVCs, card readers, and so on. This is very important indeed. This has to be emphasized because one of the failings of our democracy since 1999 is that political parties have abandoned their critical responsibilities, and they have reduced themselves to the level of fighting for election to win position. Beyond this, they have responsibilities of mobilizing their supporters, of educating them, and all other forms of representational functions that they have to perform. I think this is a time for them to perform. My biggest worry, moving to the election, is the role that the media is playing and will continue to play. I think somebody has said, well, the media has done well, within this period in terms of laying out the truth. I think there is more responsibility for the media in terms of balanced reporting, in terms of professionalism, and in terms of reducing the level of sensationalism. I think it's very important in this country where we are whipping up deliberately for narrow political gains, ethnic and regional and religious sentiments. These are very dangerous issues. Politicians take the lead in this, but I think the media should actually tone down, and trying to really create a sense of community among Nigerians and putting the national interest at the forefront of all other forms of politicking that they would like to engage in. I think this, for me, is very critical. And of course, religious leaders have lost the neutrality, and I think this is one of the tragedies of this election. And when a country or a community is in trouble, there are people you would like to call upon to mediate. There are people you would like to call upon to intervene.
we've lost this, and I think this is something that we need to learn. We need to retrieve the values of, these different groups and what they represent, and they need to mediate and bring out messages of peace, and civility. This, for me, are the critical issues to really focus on between now and the election itself.
Well, let's re-emphasize the point that so that the knock-on effect doesn't become negative. The elections are taking place on the 28th of March for the Presidential and National Assembly, and then on the 11th of April, that will be 2 weeks later, we'll be having the elections for the state governors and the state houses of assembly. Following from what Professor Sambegu has said, of course, last Friday, Ibrahim, if you took a look at the newspapers, if you needed perhaps to read more than 1 or 2 or 3 papers to get a fair account, as it were, of the outcome of the Council of State meeting that took place the previous being Thursday. Some said Council of State said, go ahead with the post. Others said, look, ADEC should go and consult XYZ. In the lead up to the adjusted timetable for the elections, we had some social dislocations already. People were moving, Dr. Okengo has alluded to that, and we also had accounts in the media. People were moving from the north to the south and from the south to the north. 6 weeks on, and then of course, probably about 2 months actually until the end of the elections. What can be done to calm frayed nerves and then reassure persons who relocated to their homesteads that, look, all will be well? Either of you could take that.
Well, for me, I think INEC has to come a little cleaner now. INEC has to show his hands on the table. You see, when you use the word substantial, I'm going to tell you a story about Ajokuta. Ajokuta, 98% completed. The 2% has made it dysfunctional. Okay, and that 2% has to do with what it is we've been talking about here: logistics, human capacity, material testing, manuals, and all that. Now, INEC also made an allusion to the fact that he also had a problem of data funds. So we need to know why INEC is not able to print and publicize the voters list. We need to know why INEC is not able to print. How much does INEC further want? How much would INEC be requiring to be able to do the needful? That's one part of it. You're talking about now allaying fears and showing strength and capacities. The second thing I think could happen very quickly is that I think we should have some kind of some inclusive committee or working group or something that can actually now begin to now look at INEC's readiness outside what INEC is saying. First and foremost, I would have proposed for a mock election using the maximum you would have in a polling booth against the card readers. Because there are 3 critical elements to this election. 1 is the PVC. 2 is the card reader. 3 are the polling booths. The moment you are not able to sensitize, mobilize, educate people on these 3 issues, what do you do? The people who are going to be using the card readers, have they been trained? Can we get INEC to ask political parties to bring 300 people to line up, and then we do this mock election to see if these things function? To demonstrate it. So what I think we need to begin to do right now is to begin to show process, not to talk process. We are ready. Substantial is huge. But that percentage that is all substantial could actually be where the challenge and where the matter is. So for me, I think what's critical, Kingsley, at this point is for INEC to see that every Nigerian has become an INEC official. Everybody now wants to now see and know what needs to be done and how it's to be done. So they should be able to show process, not talk it anymore.
I also asked about the social dislocations that we have had already. I mean, you talked about that while we were answering one of our questions. Yeah, I mean, how can we do?
The moment people feel, the moment people know. I mean, if INEC had done something that was a little innovative. They tell you if you have not found your card, pin this number, do this, do that, do that. This is where NOA can come in. These are where the government agencies can also participate. This is where the political parties can participate. Now, allaying these fears is all about showing process. The moment people know that there is nothing to hide, and somebody is able to go to the net and see this is my polling booth, somebody now says, okay, everybody is collected. You do a vox box of these collection centers and you see empty cartons. Okay, and INEC says, okay, fine, the remaining people who haven't collected, let's publish their names. This will allay fears. If it's about money, Okay, the international community has shown a lot of, willingness to be able to help. Probably in not giving money, but in giving service. So let's know what your challenges are. Let's know if it's money driven, if it's human resources driven, if it's logistics driven, if it's planning driven. This is a time all of us as Nigerians now can be able to lend our thoughts. What we are doing here now is to also now give our thoughts to INEC. If I'm listening, I'm certain they might be able to take one or two things out of it. So it's become very inclusive. But what is most important is that INEC should begin to release information, should begin to showcase its capacities, not just to talk about it. They must be able to show us, these are the card readers. When you say a card reader has 18 hours of battery life, is it idle time? Is it 18 hours of full use? Because I don't see any machine that will have 18 hours of constant use and the battery life is still there. Are there technicians you're bringing? If there's a breakdown, what do you do? What are the alternatives? If somebody now, is accredited in a booth, can he now, while identifying his booth, go to the next booth and don't go through accreditation and then use our cards to vote? These are going to be what the issues are. The moment they can showcase this, trust me, my brother, we're good to go.
Yeah, that's and particularly the point you raised about having a mock election with the stakeholders participating in that mock process. Professor Sambego, what's your take on this? Along with that's the idea of a mock election. Mock election, not to say that you want to determine who's going to win the election, just to show and demonstrate that the process for the election, will work.
You see, Richard, what makes democracy work is the performance of the critical institutions of democracy. And institutions of democracy perform well when there is public trust and there is public confidence. There are two sides to it. These institutions themselves must be able to demonstrate in order to generate that confidence and trust. On the other hand, we must also be able to say, well, these are institutions that are created for this purpose, and therefore we need to support them to do what they are supposed to do. And that is why I think there's need for some kind of moderation, because going back to, I think there are some lapses in INEC, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that INEC has done so much, particularly the current leadership within the period it came to power, and using, what we call the electoral cycle approach and making a lot of internal reforms. So some of these things that we are talking that are innovative today actually, demonstrate clearly that there's commitment to improve the electoral process. I think we need to really commend and we need to support our institutions to perform well. Well, in terms of organizing mock, election to test your processes, that might be a welcome thing, but I think it is something, I don't think INEC leadership is stupid, that they are deploying card readers without testing them, without, I don't think, I wouldn't want to sit here and begin to talk about what I don't know. I think what is important is that we should advise INEC to make sure that all their processes are well tested and that between now and the election they have ample time to do so. Richard, and I think it's important that when we begin to denigrate our institutions, then we are going to set the stage, for failure. So for it, who am I here now not to believe that the security forces that said give us 6 weeks will not deliver? It is for me to trust and to say stay by your commitments. That is how you improve and develop a political community. And I don't think we should start from the point of decapitating our institutions, particularly based on assumptions and what we do not know. I think this is very important in terms of messages we are sending out to Nigerians. But Richard, you raised a very important point about the dislocation, that has already been caused.
I'm sorry, Professor Sambego, you keep referring to Richard. I'm looking around here. Sorry. My name is Kingsley.
Kingsley, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But proceed. We're talking about social dislocation.
Yeah. Yes. You raised this point, and you came back the second time. I think we have a history in this country of people, out of fear of what will happen, begin to speed to where they think they are safe in terms of their ethnic homeland, in 1993, we had a very bizarre representation of this. People ran away, many didn't reach, those who were coming back didn't come back, you know. And that is something that we really need, you know, to really deal with. I think there are some people who have moved to their ethnic homeland precisely because that is where they registered, and because most elections are local, you can't blame them. But there are all those who have actually disappeared, you know, not because they are registered at home, because of the fear of what will happen. And I think we should really encourage people, you know, within this period, that adequate arrangements are being made. And I think that's the biggest problem that Nigerians have in terms of the unknown. I think we have ample time to do this.
Prof, many thanks. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program today. Professor Sam Egu of the Political Science Department, University of Abuja. Thank you for coming. Let me also quickly say, let me also thank Mr. Emeka Okegu. He's a development economist and a public analyst. He's a doctor, as a matter of fact. Dr. Okegu, thank you so much for your insight on the issues we talked about today.
Always an honor and privilege to speak with you guys.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Time to quickly see what's happening in the world of sports. And Musbaudan Wahab is our guide.
All right, a bit of sport now.
From the shift in the dates of the election. But the most important thing is that INEC has now extended the deadline for the collection of PVCs to the 8th of March. We would like to urge viewers, we would like to urge stakeholders, registered voters who are yet to collect their PVCs not to wait until the 1st of March, until the 7th of March, when the deadline will be so close. So you have enough lead time to go pick up your cards, and if you do not have your cards, follow the complaints procedure outlined by INEC, and you, of course, you'll get some joy from that.
Now, it's time to also rebuild confidence if we ever lose any, considering the fact that that purported report about Nigeria splitting in 2015, which was attributed to some researcher in the US, and it's been around for quite a while, has been arrested, that it's a very good thing. And the US ambassador did underscore the strength of Nigeria and our ability to overcome challenges. I guess this should rebuild whatever confidence we have lost in us as a people. Now, that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Kingsley, it's time to go.
That's correct. Ibrahim, thank you for being on the program today. My name is Kingsley Osadola. The program returns tomorrow, same time at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do have a nice day.
Good Morning Nigeria.